On the second day of Earth's creation, God produced heaven and earth. On the same day, he created the angels, archangels, and cherubim. They resided in heaven and served God. Amongst these beings were the famous archangels, Gabriel and Michael. But another stood out for their beauty. This was the archangel Lucifer. Lucifer was deemed the highest being that God had ever created. But famously, Lucifer was overcome with pride and arrogance. Lucifer considered himself so excellent that he decided to build a throne which would surpass his creator. He longed to be a god. But knowing he couldn't achieve this feat alone, he convinced a third of all the angels to form an army and seize heaven for themselves. But standing in their way was Michael, commanding the remaining angels loyal to God. A great battle began. A great battle between true good and true evil. The angels dispatched the unloyal third until Lucifer was left. Armed with a flaming blade, Michael struck down Lucifer. Lucifer and the rebel angels were then removed from heaven, now to be forever known as the Fallen Angels. So yeah, that intro was a little intense. I'm definitely never doing that again, because it definitely didn't take me 2 weeks to make. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, I think I can confidently say this is the first occurrence of war taking place, even though it's a fictional event. The Urban Dictionary describes war as an organised, violent conflict between two or more large groups of individuals, countries, societies, factions, tribes, etc. War has been waged by humans since time immemorial. First with rocks and sticks, then with bows and arrows and stone axes, then with progressively more advanced weapons. Okay, this is way too wordy, so I found a much better definition of war. War, the thing that France is very bad at. France tried to fight a war, they lost. So in this video I'm going to explain what are the most brain-dead wars in human history. First of all, I want you to look at this map. Look closely now. You can see a lot of countries are red and only a few are white. Now I want you to guess what a red shaded country and a white shaded country mean in relation to this map. Well, all red shaded countries have been invaded by the UK. Yeah, every single red one. I can quite confidently say that the UK was trying to square up to every country on Earth in the 1700s. Counting them up, you realise that only 22 countries haven't been invaded. Good job you guys, you really showed them. And as for the other 171 of you, I'm very disappointed. Do better next time. I guess if you declare war on essentially every country on Earth, then the chances are you'll be able to take over a few, which is evident because in the UK's prime, they owned about a quarter of the planet. And all that overwhelming power culminates in this country, Anglo-Zanzibar. Anglo-Zanzibar is located right about here. And if you didn't know, it is exponentially weaker than the UK. And at the time, the UK was looking at any country they could completely destroy. So in 1896, the UK invaded Anglo-Zanzibar in a long, laborious conflict to see who would take this very useful and important tiny piece of land. Both threw everything they had at each other, in an epic duel of military prowess. Surprisingly, Zanzibar was holding their own, and the UK military were getting more. They lost in 38 minutes. You could play a game of Fortnite, and the UK military could have won a war. Even though they fought for about 40 minutes, they still killed like 500 people. That's 13 people unreasonably ended per minute. I mean, they didn't really win by force. It was actually because Zanzibar surrendered. But I think it still counts. So, yeah. Moving on. This is the large flightless bird called the emu. And this is its biological cousin, the Australian. So similar, yet so different. But what you don't know about these two majestic creatures is that there's been an everlasting war between them since November 2nd, 1932. But how could a war start between two animals which were almost relatives? Well, in 1932, the Australians were trying to grow some crops in the Campione region. The emu saw this and thought, yeah, we ain't having that. So justifiably, they destroyed them. But the Australians weren't just going to take this lying down. So what did they do? To be a bit more specific, they were armed with 2 Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition to scare them. Yeah, definitely to scare them. The way the wiki explains this part almost sounds like the emus were performing a bayonet charge. They'd established an ambush near a local dam, and more than 1,000 emus were spotted heading towards their position. That sounds absolutely terrifying. Even with 2 guns, 1,000 birds sounds like a pretty formidable opponent. Anyway, they stood their ground and killed a whopping 12. Mainly because they're gun jammed, but in my opinion, I think they should have engaged in some Dark Souls style combat, just to remind them who's boss. During the second attempt of the Great Emu War, they were much more successful, killing a confirmed 986 birds in their several weeks of treacherous combat.
There's an endangered species right there.
But I mean, it's not like it really worked. Farmers were still requesting military aid in 1924, 1943, and 1948, but all were rejected. That was until they figured out the hyper-advanced technology called the fence. I'm not joking, it literally says, fencing became a popular means of keeping emus out. Which either means this, or this.
Are you disrespecting me, bruv? My mistake, original gangster. No, this cannot be forgiven. Now empty the compartments of your pent.
So I mean, at the end of the day, they settled the war quite amicably. All the stuff I've talked about so far is like way too old. So let's get a bit more modern. If you don't know, the console wars are basically a massive everlasting argument between PlayStation fanboys and Xbox fanboys to prove that their console is superior. Now the most important thing when it comes to consoles is the exclusives. To be honest, both PlayStation and Xbox have none.
I have one. I have one! There's no games! There's no games on it!
They only have 15 games each, which is pretty pitiful compared to the PS4's 15 true exclusives, 42 console exclusives, and 43 timed exclusives. Whereas the Xbox One has 33 true exclusives, 5 Microsoft exclusives, and 79 timed exclusives. But what's actually more important when it comes to the exclusives is the quality of the games. And to be honest, PlayStation takes this easily. You've got Demon's Souls, Horizon Zero Dawn, Ratchet & Clank, Spider-Man, God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us, Helldivers 2, and Stellar Blade. Whereas on Team Green, you've got Forza Horizon 5, Gears 5, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Hellblade 2, and Forza Motorsport. Xbox still has some pretty good exclusives, but I just think PlayStation really outdid themselves this time. But what makes Xbox even worse is Game Pass. It's advertised as a monthly subscription service where you can access a library of over 500 games. Pretty good, right? Well, they never said all those games were good. I'd say Game Pass actually has like 50 games that are worth playing. That's unless you're down to play this, or this. Anyway, none of this arguing matters because there will always be a better option that can do everything these consoles can do and more. The year 1912, Greece. Tensions are high between the Greeks and the Bulgarians after territorial disputes during the Balkan Wars and World War I. These tensions were exacerbated by nationalistic fervour and the Treaty of Neuilly, which assigned parts of Bulgarian territory to Greece. The border between the two nations was heavily militarised, particularly in the Petric region, where incidents were common. These small skirmishes often arose from misunderstandings or provocations. Why am I telling you this? Well, it's because it perfectly set the scene to show you how everything escalated. October 19th, 1925. A Greek soldier stationed near the border chased a stray dog across the boundary into Bulgarian territory. Bulgarian border guards, seeing the Greek soldier crossing into their land, think, free kill. The Greeks were shocked by this, but they understood the misunderstanding the soldiers had made, and resolved the issues peacefully. Nah, I'm joking. What actually happened was, rather than resolving the issues diplomatically, the Greek government, under General Theodoros Pangalos, reacted aggressively. Greece sent troops over to, and I quote, punish Bulgaria and secure their side of the border. The Greek forces occupied villages, and several skirmishes occurred, resulting in dozens of casualties on both sides, including civilians. Bulgaria then called in their parents, the League of Nations, to stop the fighting, which actually worked. Greece was ordered to withdraw its forces from Bulgaria and pay 2.3 million in damages.